I'm Brandon Isle with BYU-Idaho Radio, and I'm in the Spori Art Gallery with Brad Teare. He's the artist who has a new exhibit opening in the Spori Art Gallery. It's called Impressions of the West, and it's so fun to be here and see all this beautiful art. And this is mostly landscape art that we're looking at in this basement floor, or first floor of the gallery. Tell me what got you into doing landscapes like this?
Well, I always wanted to be an artist, and my great-grandfather was a painter, a landscape painter, and so we had some of his work in our home growing up, and so I knew that was a thing that you could be, if you if you tried really hard. So ever since I remember, I wanted to be a painter, and specifically a landscape painter, and I worked building trails up on the Pacific Crest Trail.
Oh, okay.
And when I was up there, it really kind of solidified my desire to paint landscapes. But I did, coming from a very practical background, I was an illustrator for quite a few years previous to being a full-time painter.
And you had illustrations like the New Yorker and other things like that, is that right?
The New York Times. Yeah, never
Even
illustrated
better.
for the New Yorker, but the New York Times and most of the publishers in New York, worked out in New York for about 5 years. So.
And you've done wood blocks, and we'll see some of those here.
Right.
And then you made the transition, and a lot of this is plein air, is that right?
The smaller pieces are plein air. There's a couple of larger pieces. The one over here is a plein air, but most of them are studio work. But I work from plein air pieces as I paint my larger works.
Yeah. So for those who don't know what plein air is, can you explain that and kind of your process when you go out to start painting?
Yeah. It's a tradition that was started by the French. Thus, the word plein air means open air or outdoor field painting. And I use field painting or plein air interchangeably, but it's just a way to get more authenticity in your work, especially in shadows. It's almost impossible to get really, really good color from a photo, Yeah. So it just adds a level of authenticity and reality and depth to the painting to work from plein air sketches.
Yeah. I know you wrote about kind of your process of plein air and about shadows specifically, how you had an instructor who told you he was looking at colors in the shadows and you didn't believe him. But years later, you've started to see the colors in the shadows. How important is that to get that type of color detail in what you're painting?
It's extremely important. I've never really understood that phenomenon. I'd like to talk to a scientist about it someday, that you can actually train yourself to see color. You can get more sensitivity to color. And I don't know if that's just a matter of focus. I'm not sure what it is exactly. But it's something that happens over, years and decades.
Yeah. You just don't wake up seeing all that color.
No, apparently not, or at least I didn't, but yeah.
Something interesting I find with your art is that you're using scalpels.
Palette knives.
Palette knives, yes. I call them scalpels because I'm untrained, right?
That's okay.
Palette knives, but different sizes of palette knives, and you just get this beautiful detail that you want to get up close to the paint, or to the art, and you also want to get far away. Can you talk about that process and why you've chosen palette knives for your work?
Well, in my work, previous to using palette knives, I did use brushes, and my work was just, I was always struggling with brushes, and over a course of about a year and a half, I switched over to palette knives, doing this specific show for a gallery that made a request to do this specific kind of work, very textured work. And after that show was over, I just fell in love. In the course of painting for that show, I fell in love with palette knives and just the way they were more akin to kind of carving. Like wood carving came very easy to me. Painting with brushes was very difficult for me. So It's kind of a halfway point between brushes and working with knives on wood. You know, there's this kind of carving, and I'll layer on the paint and actually go in with like a cement trowel at the end. I have an interesting video. It's about Yosemite, but I film basically the whole process, you know, with editing. I take out the color mixing and all that. But you see the whole process in that video. And at the end, I go back with a cement trowel, and I'm carving into the paint and removing a lot of paint.
Wow.
So it is a reductive or retractive process at the end to kind of unify and simplify and bring out the color that's buried underneath, kind of, you know.
Right, because you're layering so much during the process, and depending on what you want it to look like, you've got to add or take away.
Yeah. So, and I just love texture. I mean, woodcut it's all about texture. So I've always, you know, just been in love with texture. And Van Gogh was a very formative show I went to when I first got to New York, and I noticed that the power of the texture was just something very unique to his work. And it had this kind of more visceral, emotional quality that's hard. You don't really see it in reproduction. So I wanted to get that kind of power in my work.
Yeah. When people come into the exhibit, one of the first things they see is a video on the right side of you creating your art with these cool tools. And how many do you use? Like different sizes do you use for one?
Yeah. Oh, incidentally, that is the Yellowstone.
Oh, that is the Yosemite.
Yeah, it will be the Yellowstone. I said Yosemite.
Oh,
I believe,
Yellowstone. We like Yellowstone.
Yeah, Yellowstone's closer, but that's the Yellowstone painting. So people get to see, you know, how that works in the video. And you don't really notice it unless you think about it, that I'm removing paint at the end. Yeah. That last hour, I'm removing quite a bit of paint. But so I use a full spectrum of palette knives. I mean, I buy almost any palette knife I see available.
You just see it, I need that.
I do. I have everything from really small ones to cement trowels. I have, you know, really big squeegees that I sometimes have used. And I have titanium palette knives, which have unfortunately been discontinued, but the fellow that makes them custom, he's doing stainless steel that are similar, so I have a selection of stainless steel.
Do you find that the metal changes the way the paint reacts?
Yeah, the thing about the titanium ones was that, and I can get the same effect with the stainless steel with a longer blade, but it's the flexibility of it. But the titanium, I can use it to soften an edge, and it's just really beautiful and fun.
Yeah.
You know, to go back and do that.
It was so cool. I can't wait for people to see that video, just to see that process. And it's amazing to see the beginning where it almost looks like you're just kind of, you can't tell what you're going to end up with, but then by the end you step back, and like this first painting that we see called Untamed Garden, it's all these beautiful wildflowers. It's just amazing.
Yeah, there's always a step in the process where I call it chunking out the paint. It's just chunked in, and it's just really broad. And then I have to go back in and decide which edges I'm going to soften, which colors I'm going to pull out, which ones I might, minimize. So.
Yeah. Well, let's go through this exhibit a little bit and talk about some specific paintings. So if we go to the right in the exhibit, we see some of your larger paintings. We've got one called Autumn Radiance and Summer Passage, Standing Still. This one has a cabin or a structure in it. Can you tell me about this one? It's one of your larger ones and has mountains in the background.
Yeah, this one's based on a plein air sketch I did of a barn in Mendon, Utah, in the valley where I live. And I called it Standing Still for a variety of reasons. One thing is last winter it fell down.
Oh.
So, in this painting I'm commemorating this barn, which was just a gorgeous barn. Yeah. I mean, it was a classic, just incredible pioneer era barn with stone foundation, and so So it's standing still, in this painting.
Yeah, you've immortalized it.
Right. And those are the Wellsvilles, looking across the Wellsvilles. And so I haven't been out to see the remains. I don't know what it is now, but so just that kind of. It'll be in our memories. I know every artist in Cache Valley knows that barn, and they love that barn.
Yeah.
So
they've mourned it.
Yeah, they're mourning it. But it's. I know probably every artist in Utah or in Cache Valley has painted it. So it's it's been documented, and it still exists in our memories. So
yeah. Now, are most of the paintings from Utah?
This one here is from Santa Fe.
The Summer Passage.
Well, actually, that's closer to Abiquiu, which is, kind of north of Santa Fe. Up in that area, there's just these really beautiful adobe communities that are just so charming. It's just kind of, amazing and shocking how beautiful they are.
Yeah.
In the summer. So. But this one here, well, a lot of the paintings are amalgams of different scenes. I would say, like I have hollyhocks growing outside my studio. So I lot of I actually looked at my hollyhocks while I was painting this, and this particular courtyard, it didn't really have that many hollyhocks in it. So I borrowed the hollyhocks from my courtyard. And this one is largely of Gunnison National Forest. I have a gallery over in Crested Butte, and I always go into Crested Butte over the mountain on that dirt road on the west side of the mountain, and I often park and then hike down to the rivers and streams and do some sketching down there. So.
Yeah. Well, it's so fun to look at the different pieces you have where you see creeks, you see homes, you see mountains, you see the barns in the sky, and so many flowers and different colors. How do you get these colors to pop like this in your paintings?
Yeah, well, it's so, my brushwork or my mark making isn't like the Impressionists per se, like Monet or Camille Pissarro, or even Van Gogh, where they kind of did these flecks of color side by side. I tend to load up my palette knife with like 3 or 4 different colors and do one swatch.
Oh.
And so I'll get a lot of colors in one movement. And so that's kind of a different way of putting what we call color vibration. And what you want to do is get some complementary colors, oppositional colors. So that'll ignite both of the colors. So if I have a swatch of green that has some crimson in it and maybe some purple, cooler colors, it'll just kind of ignite that green. And so the green looks greener than it would otherwise.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Does that lend itself to, do you make mistakes when you have too many colors in there, or is that where the reductive process comes in?
Rarely can you make a mistake of putting too many colors in. It's possible you have a color that's too high chroma, it's too bright, like a really bright, like phthalo green, kind of acid green, and you have to kind of go over it with some red or some purple or something. But the thing is, you can do this kind of a weird thing with your palette knife where you get kind of a half and half. It's half blank and half color saturated, and you go across the top, and it'll let the color underneath kind of come through. You can see it on quite a few paintings, but that's really beautiful because you can take a high chroma color and put like a pink over the top, like a green, and it just becomes just gorgeous when you do that.
Yeah, it's so fun as you stand back and just look at all of them from a distance, just seeing the different colors pop out to you, especially the ones with the trees and the wildflowers.
Yeah. So I'm using the theory of the Impressionists and kind of using a different method of mark making.
Yeah. As viewers come in to see your art, what do you hope they take away with them?
Well, The thing I really, I mean, the ultimate is joy. If these paintings can bring people joy, that's the ultimate for me. So when I'm painting these, I have to have a feeling of joy. It's not really optional. The joy is the fuel that gets these paintings done for me.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they'll take away that joy as they see this.
Hope so.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me.
My pleasure.
It's been a delight to talk to you about your art.
Well, thank you.